Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description, to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say, I'm watching so-and-so show. And then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it. And that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 7 of Amazon Prime's Invincible, entitled, I'm Not Going Anywhere. I feel like if you watched my video from last week, where I went over what I think's wrong with the show this season, and then you watch this episode with that stuff that I said in mind, I bet you probably saw that stuff a lot more clearly this week. You know, I've talked about the disjointed nature of the subplots and how the show will tease or briefly introduce something and then ignore it for so long as to make you either no longer care or forget about it entirely. And then we see that again this week with the complete abandonment of the Sequid plot to focus on this Rick subplot. And I'm not trying to say I want the Sequid subplot back. I don't. But the show keeps jumping around to all these different subplots, few of which are interesting, mind you. And again, like this strange storytelling strategy stands out a lot more when you don't have a strong A plot like last season did. It's not necessarily an unused strategy either. Like Game of Thrones famously juggled several plots at a time. The difference is you rarely went more than an episode or two before subplots were revisited. With this show, they're bringing season 1 stuff that was barely any good then into season 2, and it's not an episode or two later, it's years later. And it's the same with this, like, the Angstrom-Levy storyline that we are that they set up in episode 1, completely forgot about it, and unsurprisingly they have still not fully revisited it yet. I thought that they would after they had in the credit sequence last week. They didn't. We end this episode with another Angstrom-Levy scene. And did any of you, honestly, did any of you give a fuck about that? Like, aside from the fact that Debbie and Oliver are being held hostage, like, which I would assume you would care about that aspect of it. But I'm like, were you sitting there like, oh shit, Angstrom-Levy got him. Like, I doubt it, because you probably don't even remember that character's name because he hasn't been on the fucking show. So like, I don't know. It just seems like a foolish decision to try to like set that up as a big cliffhanger with a character that, again, we've seen him, but we have not seen his storyline since episode 1, maybe the beginning of episode 2. And remember the big gap in between, you know, the mid-season break in between 4 and 5. It's been forever since we've seen that character. I'm like, yeah, I remember seeing this guy, and I, as someone who have reviewed this show, I remember being interested in his plotline when it happened, but that was so long ago, and they didn't give a shit. Why do I give a shit who this guy is? Like, I don't know. They set it up like it was a cliffhanger, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't even remember who this fucking guy is anymore. It's just, I don't know. It's strange decisions, man. And look, I'm sure the finale is going to be great. This Angstrom-Levy storyline is probably going to play out pretty well. We'll probably see Nolan again. I like where they're going with Alan being able to harm a Viltrumite. So, like, there's a lot of good stuff that's being set up for this finale. But what I don't want to happen, and it's not gonna happen here, but no matter how good the finale is, I don't want people to forget how much less this Nolan-less season was than season 1. Like, don't forget how many times I'm certain you said, who the fuck is that? When they bring back some character from season 1 who's in one episode, when you wish they paid more attention to the storylines they set up for this season, like Angstrom Levy. So, like, I just don't let your love for season 1 or for this show as a whole cloud the fact that this season, I feel like, has suffered immensely from a lack of Nolan, number 1, and then how it's handled this vast amount of subplots, number 2. So now that we've got all that out of the way, let's talk about some of what happened in this episode and the stuff that I did like, because, again, there's always something to like here. So the episode opens at a comic convention where Mark meets the writer of Seance Dog, and there's a great scene, at least it was great in that moment, where the writer talks about, like, corners that animators will cut, and as we watch the show do the things that he's describing. The reason why I say it was great in the moment is because I feel like it almost kind of, like, inadvertently hampered my viewing later. So during the breakup scene between Mark and Amber, which I thought was actually a very strong breakup scene, given that it's a conversation that we've seen happen in superhero film or television a bazillion times. Given that, it was a very strong scene. But there's a couple moments where you only see half of Amber's head. I think it's like only the bottom half, like you don't see the top half. And I almost surely would not have noticed that if it weren't for the earlier scene with the Seance Dog writer. And the problem is, then now I'm thinking, are they doing this on purpose because they want me to see it? Are they making some sort of point? Or are they literally doing a cost-saving measure right now, and I'm seeing it because it was brought to my attention earlier? Because I don't really see a purpose to doing it otherwise. But then I'm like, this is an important and pivotal moment in this episode and in this season, and even in this series, this Mark and Amber breakup. So, like, it seems weird to, like, almost like call my attention to that kind of a choice in that moment. Like, I don't know, that again, strange decisions. And regardless, why would you want to put yourself in the position to pull the audience out of that scene? Like, this is like I said, it's a pivotal moment. I'm sitting here like, oh shit, the top half of her head is cut off. Why would you want me noticing that at that time? So that's why I say the scene with the Seance Dog writer was good only in the moment, because I feel like it kind of fucked with the breakup scene later. And then later in the same scene, Mark gets called away to go save Rex. And I did kind of roll my eyes at this, because why can't literally anybody else go do it? Like, why did it have to be Mark? But hey, they were barreling toward the breakup scene at this point. There's been a couple of things where I'm just like, Mark doesn't have to do that. Like what I said last week, I'm like, why does Mark have to go visit Optimus Prime on another planet? Why can't Optimus Prime come here? And it was like, they're just piling on more reasons to get us to the Mark and Amber breakup. I did like Rex's gun in his replacement hand. I thought that was pretty cool. So now I briefly want to talk about a couple of the subplots that we've seen this season. Well, actually, I don't necessarily want to talk about these subplots because I don't care about them, but I kind of want to know what you guys think. So another example of weak subplots that aren't interesting, at least for me, are this one with Rudy and Monster Girl, where he's trying to make it so she doesn't have to transform anymore and stop getting younger, and she's just like, no, fuck that, I don't care. And the one where the Immortal wants to quit the team. You guys care about either of those at all? Like, here's the thing. Is there a world where both of these subplots work on this show? Absolutely. On the surface, they're both interesting. I would be interested in that. But spread out among 17 other subplots that aren't getting much attention either, I don't think they work. They need to trim the subplots down to something more manageable and then give each of them a sufficient amount of attention. I suspect they're going to try to wrap up a whole bunch of these subplots in the finale, and whatever they're going to do with those two specific ones I just cited, I feel like is destined to fail because they haven't given those two enough attention to make me care about them. So, but I feel like the same can be said about virtually every other subplot on this show. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like they're destined to knock a couple out of the park, but I think like they're also destined to have a couple fail because I just don't care that the Immortal is sad about Duplicate. Like, I don't care that about Rudy and Monster Girl. And it's not because, like I said, it's just because they haven't given them enough attention. So, which is fine, but now you can't like try to go into the finale and have some big thing happen and then expect me to give a shit. I won't. But the episode does end well, starting with a great scene where a Viltrumite woman, I think her name was Anissa, something like that. A Viltrumite woman interrupts Mark and Amber's meal by merely placing her hand on Amber's neck, which given the Viltrumite reputation, had to be absolutely terrifying for Amber, and I thought it really came through in that scene. I thought that was a really intense moment, especially with the idea of like her calling out the elephant in the room, like, Mark, if you think you can get here fast enough to stop this, I promise you can't. Do you want to risk it? I thought, oh, okay, because I was thinking that. I'm like, well, I can't. Like, I feel like Mark can possibly handle this, but she claims that the Viltrumites are needed to essentially run Earth because we can't run it ourselves. Again, another common theme in most sci-fis. And most things where aliens come here, like, y'all can't, you're destroying the Earth. We're going to come here and take care of it. She talks about wanting to help people, and she takes no pleasure in killing. So when a kaiju attacks a cruise ship, Mark and Cecil are both like, okay, well, you say you don't take any pleasure in killing, and you want to help people, prove it. Let's go help. Why don't you come with Mark and go help save this cruise ship? So she agrees, and her and Mark go to face this kaiju together. Mark fails while she watches. She's not doing anything. She's just observing. And just before humans are about to die, she intervenes and easily kills the monster by just like flying through its head or some shit, proving her point about how we need Viltrumites here. I did. Now, again, I wasn't going to mention this because, again, if this was season 1, I wouldn't even mention this. But again, this is just another example of the corners that I feel like this season has cut. But, like, why couldn't Mark have just done that? Like, I feel like I've seen Mark fly through something like that, or I've seen Nolan do it. Either way, why couldn't Mark have done that? He didn't even try. Like, I felt like as soon as I saw that, I was like, Mark could just fly through his brain and it'd be dead. And then he doesn't do that. He fights and punches it, and then the Viltrumite does it, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's awfully convenient, isn't it? So Mark, not unlike Michael Jordan, he seems to take this personally, and he gets overly like combative and confrontational with her. She's like, remember, we started with reason, and I'm like, yeah, sorta. I mean, I wouldn't call the thing with Amber's, hand on Amber's neck thing, I wouldn't call that reasonable, but aside from that, sure, you just wanted to talk. But Cecil tells Mark to just agree to running Earth, like just say you'll do it so she'll leave, but I don't know, he refuses to take the easy way out, and he continues to get his ass kicked, causing the Viltrumite to just leave of her own free will because she wasn't sent on a mission to kill him. Also, during this climax sequence, the final third of the episode, we also have the breakup scene that I talked about before between Mark and Amber. Again, really solid scene. Strong finish, I think, to a mediocre episode, but again, strong scene. I wish it didn't have her head cut off midway, which pulled me out of the scene, but whatever. I think I made my point enough. Not a lot of people watch these videos anyway, and I don't consume a ton of other people's reviews, so I don't know how the streets are feeling about this season, but maybe I'm way off base, man. Maybe you guys are loving it. I don't know, but I also feel like I've laid out my reasons for disappointment pretty thoroughly and cited specific things like, when it did this, I didn't like that, and when it did this, I feel like it should have done that. I feel like I've made a good case. I'd be interested in hearing some well thought out retorts if you guys are feeling this season. Don't come at me with, oh, well, I like it, or go fuck yourself. I didn't ask you that. I'd like to hear the case for how this is a good season if you believe it to be a good season, and I don't want to just hear, I like the writing. Most people say that and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. What do you mean when you say the writing was bad? What does that mean to you? No, look at some of the things that I've said and say, this is why I think that's wrong, or this is why I disagree with that. As it stands for me, this season's been a pretty big disappointment, and I think the absence of Nolan has not only lessened this season, but exposed the show's flaws that I think a great Nolan plot line would have overshadowed. I think the finale will likely be good. It could be one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen, and I don't think it'll be enough for me to thumbs up this season, but I'm still looking forward to it. I expect it will be great, and I will see you guys next week to talk about it, or later this week, it depends, and until then, peace.